All right, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. It's good to see you all. Thank you for joining the conference. It's going to be great to have a conversation with you all about the projects that you're leading, and I'll share a little bit of knowledge of how to resource them. So, my name is Shey Rivera Ríos. I was born and raised in Borique, Puerto Rico. I'm a campo kid, as we call them, so a rural kid. And growing up, I decided to really focus on cultural work and learn how to build communities and build structures that can help us build healthier and better lives for our community and our young people. So in 2010, I moved to Providence, and I worked there for about 8 years at AS220, a cultural center that supports young people and culture bearers. And that's actually where I met Two Hawks and Taino Palermo as well. So for many years, we've been collaborating on the role of culture and the importance of culture bearers in building the futures that we need for our communities. So today we'll talk about restoring ecosystems, funding for Indigenous-led land and water projects. I like moving around, but they have me staying here for the camera, but I'll try my best to feel close to you. So thank you. If I just seem awkward standing in one moment, it's so that we can have our audiences in the virtual realm as well. So from the cultural work that I was doing at AS220, then I started to think about policy and how we impact communities on the ground. We can do all our organizing, but then how do we get the things we need to make sure that our work continues? So now I've been working for the past 5 years at One Square World, and we are a Boston-based organization that facilitates and designs processes to engage our community civically. We do participatory planning and community-led policy design. We also use arts facilitation and cultural practice to build spaces where we can come together, talk about our experiences of climate, of injustice, of transportation, and of housing, and then use that community information to inform how cities work and build solutions. So our processes really center the people most impacted, because we really believe that as people who are most impacted, we are the ones who know the very truth of these problems. And that's not often what happens, right? Usually there's people in these institutions or ivory towers that don't have experience with what our communities are facing, and they get to make the decisions. So it's up to us to continue to change those systems. So the 3 things that we do are bring people together to design better systems. And we also do collaborative governance structures. What does that mean? So something that we did in the city of Providence was we designed a cultural climate plan. And what that plan entailed was having residents be the people at the table making decisions with the city. And that's a collaborative governance group. And that group turned into the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee of the city. It's still ongoing. They're doing amazing work with young people, and they still influence the city decisions. So I feel like there's a lot of lies that we're often told, that we just don't get to have a say in the ways that our cities, towns, and municipalities move, and that other people get to actually be the decision makers. But we're trying through our work to teach everyone that that's not true. We actually get a say in city budgets and things like that. And we're in a difficult time where a lot of changes, so we even need more people to understand how these systems work. So and art and culture. We are people who are culture. Everything about our DNA, our blood, our cells is culture and art. And we're often told that that is not, that those are in museums or that it belongs in institutions. No. Our communities have been building culture and innovating for years. So we bring that back also, how we gather, how we share meals, how we share knowledge. And that's what needs to influence our future. So I'm here to you today to talk to you about funding and environmental justice resourcing for land and water projects. Usually when people talk about environmental justice, it's just a term, but everything that is Indigenous-led is environmental justice. And that's something that we've been trying to think about. Whatever the terms, and even today when terminology is changing, it doesn't matter. Our work stays the same. So most Indigenous-led projects are environmental justice, and they qualify for funding from institutions that serve these goals. These can be watershed restorations, they can be community research and public education, they can be land remediation, or even land stewardship training. There's a lot of work, for example, the Pequot folks are doing in Rhode Island. all of that work qualifies as environmental justice and can be resourced. There's work that is happening in Boriquén with elders like Bibi Naniki. That work of bringing back community and preserving her land and having people be there constantly to take care of it, that qualifies as environmental justice. So anyone has applied for a grant before for the projects that you're doing? Can I see some hands? Ooh, okay. Okay, one, great. All right, that's great. Well, that's awesome because I can get to talk to you from the bare bones of what this means and then tap into your experience. So usually for the kind of projects that we all lead with community, there are 3 types of grants. So one of them is research grants. And these grants are focused on gathering research before implementing a project. So what does that mean? Community visioning for your project can be gathered at cultural gatherings. You can have sessions with community members to talk to them. What do you want out of this project? What do you want out of this land? How can we involve the youth? All of that information can be put into the grant and you can support your work through it. So this means like surveys, interviews, community discussions, all of that can be turned into a summary of priorities to your group to define the project and what you're doing. So this research funding can cover costs of your program staff, supplies and materials, expenses for all your cultural gatherings, and community stipends. I try to tell people the more and more we do projects, we should pay the people. We should try to cover childcare. We should try to cover interpretation costs. If the grant can hold it, add those costs. We pay the people first. So yeah, these are the type of grants that usually foundations, universities, or municipalities have available. So that depends on where the location that you are. Another type of grant is an implementation grant. So these grants are usually bigger and they are multi-year and they support your project. So after you do the research and you prove, okay, we need to restore the watershed and bring back fishing to our community, this is the 2-year plan to start engaging folks to do that. So narratives must be very specific to what you will do and how you will do it. Usually when people write grants, and I'm an artist as well, or culture bearer, so I love visioning and I use poetic language. And that's really important too, because we need to tap into people's heart of why we do the work. But we also have to be very specific. How many gatherings are you having? How many young people will be involved? Do you have a circle of elders? Do they make decisions? So really talking about the bones of the work that you're doing so people can understand, okay, this is what we're funding and this is how we're going to see it grow in the next few years. So they usually require a work plan, list of project activities, and a timeline. Also, partnerships are always great. I get people asking me, is it good to say that we're involved with Movement Education Outdoors or with the Nature Conservancy? Yes. Whenever you have partnerships in place, it means that your project is really strong and you're not the only person doing it. You're involving more people. One person also said, well, I don't know what those partnerships are going to be. I just need to talk to my community first. Great. So you just add, okay, we'll have several community sessions to identify who are the best partners so that we can do this project together. Usually with these grants, you can look up your municipality or federal funding. We can talk about that a little more today because there's a lot going on, or foundations. And then an example is, let's say the city of, the city where, so request for proposals from your municipality. I was just thinking the city of Boston just put a request to do a project. Okay, you can see those and apply. And so organizations like mine and like the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, when you have a project, you come to us and then we discuss it with you. We develop it with you. We talk about budgets and timeline and we help you write. So that's actually a partnership that my organization is doing with the Center of Indigenous Peoples' Rights. We've helped already write maybe about 4 big grants for community organizations. And this is important because not a lot of people have time to write these grants, or they're really overwhelming on purpose, But it's like, no, we have to build people power so we can put our knowledge together and crank out these applications because our communities and you all need funding to support your work. So that's another piece of why we're having this presentation today. The last one is capital investments. These are bigger grants, but I wanted to talk a little bit about them too, because I know a lot of people here want to secure land or build their own cultural centers. And these are grants that support that. So an example is the Champlain Foundation in Rhode Island. Usually foundations and grants are the ones that you can go to look at what programs they have and pitch projects. We can have questions, at the end of our session, we'll have questions, so I can talk a little bit more with all of you about this. And as an example of a grant that I wanted to share with you today, a lot of changes are happening, but I think that it's worth talking about this specific grant that we helped several organizations through the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights to apply, just so you get a sense. So Environmental Justice for New England is a big community initiative that was started last year through federal funding. And it has three main partners: Health Resources in Action, ACE Grassroots Fund. They're the holders of this bucket of money. And then my organization is contracted by ACE. ACE is a Black-run organization in Boston, and they hired us to do all the community engagement, to let people know that these funds are available and to help apply for the grants. So this is grant making to help sustain environmental justice work. That's basically what it is. A little bit of the background of how this is working, and I'm happy to talk about this because there's so many shifts federally. The Environmental Protection Agency launched a program called Thriving Communities Grant Making Program. So this is usually how these federal grants work. There's a department, they launch an initiative, that initiative has buckets of funding, and then they go down to different regions. And then in the regions, they have organizations that help with grant making. So then the base organizations can apply. So they always make it so confusing, but I'm trying to distill, how does this work? Because we need to know how this works. So the goal of this program was to support community-based organizations, environmental justice organizations, nonprofits, and other entities representing underserved, urban, rural, indigenous, remote, and capacity-constrained communities in implementing projects that address public health. So this was part of an executive order in 2021. So this was a very specific bucket of funding that was supposed to go to Indigenous, Black, and Brown organizations on the ground to address community needs. Obviously, it's being attacked right now, and we can talk about that more. But how this grant works, like I mentioned, there was the big bucket of funding, and it got divided into 10 regions all across the country. And that's usually how these federal grants work. We're in Region 1, New England. And if you see Boriquen, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, New York, and New Jersey are Region 2. Hawaii and California and all that area over there on the other side are Region 9. So each of these regions gets a bucket of funding. In New England, like I mentioned, the three partners that received the slice of pie of New England are these three organizations, and they create the structure to support the orgs on the ground. So what does this mean? I'm going to move us here. The structure for this grant too is there's a big bucket of funding, there's the three people I mentioned, and they selected one organization in each state to serve as an anchor org. So what is an anchor org? It's a proven organization that does a lot of work that can help find more organizations to fund. So these are the roles, these are the organizations across New England. Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs in Connecticut. So if you're in the area, this is an organization to link up with. Land Peace Foundation in Maine, an Indigenous-led organization. Super important because they're the only one in this list. Rights and Democracy Institute in New Hampshire, Land and Access Opportunity Board Vermont, Transportation for Massachusetts and Mass, and the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee in Rhode Island. Who's in Rhode Island here? Who's in Massachusetts? Great. Who's in Connecticut? Awesome. That's great. Who's in Vermont? New Hampshire? Okay, so Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs and Transportation for Massachusetts. And after this session, I can connect you all with all these organizations because it's also a great way to help. They will help you find funding as well for your work. So, okay, what does that mean? These specific grants, like I mentioned, there are 3 different kinds of grants that we usually find in the ecosystem to resource our work. So these grants are divided into 3 phases. The first one is assessment. So like I mentioned, research. You can actually apply for a research project for up to $150,000. So that includes your community gatherings, that includes having assessments and thinking about with your community, what do you need for strengthening this project. The phase 2 is implementation, so is 3. So phase 2 is planning and implementation. It's 2 years. So you can apply to up to 250,000. And the last one is 350. So these are for projects that are pretty much already rolling, or if you have a very clear idea of what your community needs, like you are working on oyster restoration at a watershed, or if you need to do land remediation at let's say the Two Hawks group, the Mashantucket tribe applied to do land restoration around the Mashantucket pond so that the community, when it can gather, that's a safe place, and also to bring back native plants and to bring back fishing. So all these opportunities to restore our ecosystems can happen in a project. And the other piece I talk about a grant. Grants are great, but they're a structure. I think the most important thing about a grant is for you all to sit with your community, talk about your project, write down what the goals are, because it can be for one grant, but if that one doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. You can apply to multiple grants, or you can sit down with the foundations and be like, we have a really important community project that needs to be funded. Can we get your advice on who should we talk to and how should we talk about this project, so that we can get investors to the table? So the most important thing is I think about every grant as an opportunity to refine how we talk about the work, So as long as you know very clearly and your community is with you, this is a tool to help you pitch. And then you're ready. This grant, it's great because a lot of folks were already ready. They had already developed the project plans and they could be like, all right, great. We're just going to tweak a few things and we're going to send it away. And just like this one, more will come. So this is just really important to think about how you develop the program and the things that you need. So example of issues that, I really like talking about this because they don't often tell us that all these land stewardship, land preservation projects really do qualify for this kind of work. So it's like air quality and asthma, fence line air quality monitoring of effluent discharges, like all these different things. It doesn't really matter. It's training community in how to take care of our land, how to take care of our water, our air, and anything that is related to that can be funded through environmental justice grants. So for example, in Boriquen, there is a large group. I guess I work a lot with watersheds, a lot of water in my life. Is working to do a large community campaign to teach people about 3 tributaries in Boriquen that go all the way to Loíza. And, there's like stormwater, there's pollution that impacts one community and goes all the way to impact the other community. So how to create a large educational campaign that involves youth to get together and have conversations about the water, and also train them to test the water and test the air, and build pride of ownership of their land and that they can be good stewards. These kinds of creative visionary projects, like you're invited to think creatively about how you want to engage your community. And people will fund these things because we need that. A lot of people are not engaging our communities and our young people and our elders in this kind of work. So it's a big opportunity. And also thinking about who around you is doing similar work. Like in Roger Williams Park, for example, they have a stormwater coalition and project. Oh, great. Let's talk to them and see what they're doing. They could be a partner, and we could train some young folks or things like that. Other beautiful projects that you could do in terms of education. I love coloring books. Coloring books are wonderful. We sit down as our family and talk to young people and learn together. So creative pieces that can support your work, just add them all in there because it's engagement. It's keeping up community in tune with the issues that we need to talk about in our communities. Emergency preparedness and disaster resiliency. How important in this day and age? What do we do with flooding? How do we make sure that all our people in our neighborhoods have a pack of water, of food, of like batteries, solar, anything. We need to be preparing our communities for when there is no electricity, when there's floods, when there's heat waves. Those kinds of projects also are very important, and you can think about having that available to your community as well. So those are just some of the ideas, and this will be available too as a slide deck for the Center of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, so you can access this. And I'm also available to continue to have conversation. We have a couple more little pieces to talk about and would love to just open it up for questions. So let's see here. So in terms of this specific grant that I also wanted to share with you is how it's broken down. So it has actually 4 different kinds of applications. So there's seed funding. Usually grants have this kind of piece where it's like for short-term supports. And for example, the Poconoket applied to this one so that they could get some equipment and and pay for security guards for the land. So there's always people there. What are the things that you immediately need? Those can be seed grants, and those are short-term grants, and they're usually for the year, 6 months to 1 year. Now, when you do tier 1 through tier 3, which is the research, assessment, planning, or implementation, those are more, those are 2-year projects generally. So, for the assessment projects, like I mentioned, these are things that are related to research, sampling and monitoring and testing of land, air, or water, or community surveys. And in my mind, it's like every cultural gathering is an opportunity to gather information from our community on what they need. So those are things that are there. Planning projects and implementation projects, like I mentioned as well. The planning projects gives you a little bit of time to build those partnerships that you need. It's also great because you can develop communications plan or curriculum, educational tools for the community. You can pay young people to do graphic design, create brochures, go out into the community and share the knowledge with them. You can design your websites, any tool that you need to communicate with folks. Also WhatsApp threads, have an administrator of a WhatsApp thread. I think I use WhatsApp a lot to reach our community members, and it's good to have 1 or 2 people kind of moderate and share information there, or even Facebook. So these planning project grants also include a lot of community engagement, which is really great. And also things like cleanups and just smaller scale ways to engage the community and starting to do the work. And then the implementation project is full on, okay, now we're ready. We're gonna restore a pier. We're gonna buy tents to have our gatherings. We're gonna restore fishing to our communities by working with scientists to train our young people, whatever it is. That one is, okay, we're gonna do 2 years and restore the watershed to bring people back to fishing or oysters. So that's an implementation project. Another piece around implementation projects that is super important is this workforce development piece. How do we create paid compensation for the community members that are often doing this work for free because we need our communities to be supported. So how do we create compensation and start to plant seeds to our jobs for our folks to have the ability to take care of the community work, the land, and also teach other people to do that. So I love that. I feel like for me is the first thing is getting people paid, the people power, because we need us to do this work. So that's a lot about this grant. And some of the things I mentioned to you, I wanted to just talk a little bit more about just grants in general. How do we prepare to get resourcing for our projects? So when we resource, what I find important in thinking about a grant, sometimes it's good to dream big, but you think about your own house first. I also think about tourism in the same way, I don't like when tourism focuses too much on guests. It's no, we focus on our people first, because if you don't have your house correct, you can't host people. So how do you think about the things you need to fund right now that you are currently doing and that the people around you are currently doing? So you have that safe and secure and there's funding for it. And then you can think, all right, we're going to add a new program next year or things like that. But always thinking about what you currently do first. And then thinking about the program and the people you serve, and all of these grants, they will ask you, what do you do? So listing how many gatherings you hold, how many people you serve, describe the community you serve as clearly as you can. This one is a really hard one. When I used to work at Age to 22, they used to be like, we serve everyone. It's like, well, no, we don't. And who exactly are the profile of people that we are in community with? So, for example, at Once for World, for me, it's very clear. We work with other leaders who work in nonprofits. They're usually parents. They usually have multiple jobs. They're culturally rooted, working class folks. They consider culture and family and spirituality important to them. What are the things that make your community unique? And like, speak to those things. You're like, your community. And this is a specific group of folks that need support, and this is how we move. So describing people is a really great way to get a sense, to tell people who you're with, very important. Describe clear goals. This is really important because I really value our time, our capacity, and our energy. Sometimes we want to do a lot of things. And I'm an Aries and I'm also Boricua, so I like doing a lot of things. Yeah. And we gotta, because we have had to hustle hard to get where we are, and we work hard. And also we have to think, when we do all the work that we do, how do we bring people with us? So we're spreading the work, because if we all carry a little bit of the work, then the work becomes sustainable. It's not fair when only one or two people are holding all of it. And that's one of the main problems of our movement work, right? So it is really important. But for there, I try to think, if we're going to apply for a grant, don't pack it all in. Just think about what are very specific things you can do right now that will also give you a little bit more resourcing and give you a breath. Because you do need, I don't know if this happens to you all, but when you get a moment of rest, if it's like eating a meal or taking a shower or just taking a walk, sometimes that's when the best ideas happen. It's because you need that break. You need that little break for yourself as a creator, as a thinker, as a community leader, to digest everything around you and create fresh new ideas. So with grants, I try to tell people, don't pack everything in. Try to do 2 or 3 things that are really, really solid. And also when funders see that, they know it's a clear plan. But also just like, it's an opportunity to be like, we're going to do those 2 things. If I had more money, then we can engage other programs of other work and other people. It's an opportunity to leverage too. I think about, we give so much, but it's like, okay, let's think about what we give and then prove first, like show first. We're just going to do this part that's really important first. And then if you can give us additional funding, we will grow the program. So, it's about valuing the work that we do too, but also creating that space, because we can't be, this is such a hard world right now. There's so much work that we continue to do. And where a lot of folks are tired, we're tired, and we need support. So when we create these grants, let's write them with that consciousness. Let's do what's really important right now. Let's resource the people, and also let's give ourselves a breath and tell people our work is very, very valuable. So fund us now, and then if you want, we can do this work at another scale. It requires more funding. And usually people are open to listening, because they know this is hard work. I try to tell, I don't know, my mom, not my mom actually, my cousins, because they would tell me to tell my mom. There's a saying in Boricua people, mejor pedir perdón que pedir permiso. It's better to ask for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. All of us are little misfits and punks over here. If not, we wouldn't get the work done. So then describe your clear goals, explain why this project is important and what challenges it will address. This is important too, because it's like, what exactly we're addressing is sometimes hard, because there's so much we need to address. There's so many problems in our communities. But for example, it's like, okay, we are not able to have our community gather around the water because the water is polluted. We cannot maintain our cultural practices of being in relationship to the land because non-native plants have invaded this space. Like things like that, like very clear, arroz con gandule, the very clear language of what you're doing. A lot of people try to make you think, oh no, we have to have academic language in these grants. No, people just want to know what you're doing and why it's important. And then it's like they have grant readers, and you don't know who these people are. They can be from all over. They can have experience. They might not. And they just need to know. what you're doing and have a very clear sense so they can be, all right, this is a good project. Great. And then, like I mentioned, specific partnerships you have or places that you want to build partnership with. It's okay to be like, you don't have the partnership in place, but it's all right. I want to work with Movement Education Outdoors and engage their youth. And we're going to talk about it if I get this grant. You know, it's okay to say that. The last piece I wanted to talk a little bit about was budgeting. And then we can just open it up and just, you know, hear what you're holding and what you're thinking and some of the things that are coming up for you. But budgeting and grants, I actually really like budgeting and grants. I don't know what's wrong with me, y'all, but I like it. I just think resources for our communities are so important, and I take that so seriously. So I think about, okay, what exactly do we need to resource, and how do we steward those funds properly? And, we, try to do our best with them. So budgeting for grants should be simple and specific, include all your program supplies, costs of program staff, get yourself and your people paid. A lot of people don't do that actually in the grants. The amount of people I have to send back grants to and tell them, you didn't pay yourself. Where's your fee? And they're like, oh, but I don't know. No, you got to pay yourself, because if you're not paying yourself, the project won't happen. We're used to giving a lot to our communities, but we also got to take care of ourselves so we can continue to be available to our communities. So yeah, include costs of program staff, materials and supplies, space costs, any related program expenses. Put everything, in there. If you can put it in, put it in. Or even if it's just a little part of it, put it in. Consider including community stipends to support participants in your community to be part of this and contribute to this work. Also consider accessibility supports. I mentioned this before, like childcare, interpretation, transportation. Sometimes we need to take people places, and it's really hard, especially in New England. Transportation here is so terrible. You can't really get around. And grants can usually accommodate 10 to 20% of admin fee for your project. That covers the people who write your grant. They cover your operations person, our women who are always tending to the office and making sure things get done. Just admin fee helps you run your organization or your project. And always think about supporting your existing costs, like I mentioned. Invest in expenses that will support your work over a longer time. I really love the Poconoket grant because they really were thinking along those lines. They were like, if we have this equipment and this and this and this, then even if we don't get anything else the rest of the year, we're good. So that's great. Let's focus on that, because then everything else is like icing on the cake. It's not icing because we still need the money, but always think about supporting your costs. Think about equipment and what your community needs to do good work for the long term. Also think about contractor positions who could take on short-term projects that will support longer-term goals. So that's great, because it's if I can hire someone to do a website, then that's awesome, because then now when I have funders, I'll show them the website, and the website is up to date and has videos and everything, and it'll help get more funding. So things like that. These are some of the energy that I try to think when I think about grants and funding. And grants are just a vessel. One thing that people don't often talk enough about, I say, is grants are grants, but relationships are key. So if you're going to apply to a place, you look who's in there, who's in that foundation, who you can talk to invite them over for a visit, come for a tour. Let us talk to you about our work. Come to an event, a community gathering. Come to the full moon gathering that we're holding with our elders. Just have people come through and develop that relationship. That often leads to invitations to apply to grants, and we can apply to grants. It's it's a 50% chance if we get them. But if we have the relationships, that increases to 70 or 80%, because people are actually on the ground seeing your work. So always check in. If you can do that, that would be wonderful. All the grants all the grants that I've gotten have been through relationship building. Because people want to know you as leaders and know that they're investing in something powerful and that your relationships with community are true, And I think about that as a transactional relationship in some ways, but also it's not, because people are working hard to try to find resources and get them to communities. So, while it's such a hard dynamic to think about grants and foundations and funders, it's still really good to be we have allies. There's people out there that are wanting to shift how things are, and let's work together. So yeah, that's what I've got for you today. I would love to just hear how this is landing on you, things that you're working on and that you're looking for resources for. And we can just open it up and have about 15 minutes of conversation. Yeah? Ready to talk? Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Let me see how much time we have. Thank you so much. I think we have time for 2 or 3 questions. All right. My name, yes. Shey Rivera Ríos. Shey Riaku Rivera Ríos, or just Shey. And I'm at One Square World. Yeah, actually, there I am. Y'all can contact me. I'm happy to talk about your projects, happy to visit your land, your organization, help you think, and also probably find grant writers to support you. And we also have a database of grants so we can look up and look at what's possible to get funding.
Okay.
Yes.
With your organization, you work with Connecticut Deep at all?
With Connecticut what?
Deep?
No, I don't think so. Maybe Connecticut Roundtable for Climate and Jobs works with a coalition. Oh, maybe. What?
I mean, like, based off of the project of what we have going on our land, it's like, so Deep is basically funding the project.
Yeah. I mean,
but more of partnership on helping with the grant.
sorry, they didn't tell me how to.
No, you're not. And the biggest kind of spoke out partnerships.
Yes.
But I don't know if I'll have or I should say Connecticut environment.
Yeah, no, we haven't yet because we started this relationship with Connecticut very recently because of this big group through Connecticut Climate and Jobs. Yeah, so it'd be great to connect with them. And now, so we've been building. We've done a lot of work all over the country, but we're building more intentionally regionally. So in Boston, we've been steady there. We have about 10 organizations with long-term relationships. And now we're building into Connecticut a little deeper and like other places as well. So it'd be great to connect with them. Great. And we're gonna have also like through the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, we will share information, but we're gonna have a set of events also in the fall that we'd love for you all to come through. We're gonna talk about climate, health, housing, and transportation, and it'd be great because we really want to strengthen who else is out there doing the work and how do we continue to bolster up so that all the projects receive funding. Because all the funders right now are running around a little bit like chickens without a head. Right? It's a different time. A lot of shifts are happening. So if we come at this moment with vision of ecosystem, we can get them to just come in and sell. So it'd be great to connect with you. Thank you. What are other questions? Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. Really great. One of the questions that I have is that put on the grant administration, there's a lot of federal government on operational costs. And found that principal state private donors and private transfers to fund operational costs of employees to that nature is difficult. And I really speak to that, how to find resources and funding should there be issues to federal grant.
Yeah, that's not sweet. Can I have your name?
Oh, yeah.
Good to meet you. Yeah, so that's a great question because that's part of the moment of shifts that we're in. So foundations I found, like you said, sometimes they have general operating support, which is unrestricted funding. Like Leah said, it's like funding for operational costs, and there's also project costs. With the grant that I showed you is a strategy of like how to use a project, but to also start including operational costs within that project. But it's a time of a lot of changes. I think right now we're also trying to just witness and see how things are flowing because it's like the third month after the political shift that happened. And so a lot of things happened very quickly, and then funds were frozen and frozen, and there's been a little bit of a dance. So we're trying to all figure out, letting it the dust settle to see what actually is happening. But in terms of funding strategy, I think still thinking about codifying what your operational costs are, and then bringing in your funders to have a conversation so they can help you see what is happening right now and how are you planning to step up to this moment. Or even if they say, I don't know what we're going to do right now, because I've had two funders tell me that. We don't know right now how we're going to move in this moment, but if you give us 2 more months, we'll have an answer for you. You know, and that's like really important. But I think having multiple strategy, you know, having the foundations that you're connected to, keeping them in connection with you, and also the federal funding right now, a lot of it is paused. We'll see in the next 2 months, you know, what happens, because a lot of people are fighting lawsuits because this is funding that is already approved and contracted to be sent to communities. So in many ways, it's unconstitutional. So there's a lot of folks who are pursuing legal action. So we're going to see results in the next few months to see what the determination is. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes.
Hi, my name is Leah, and I'm from Child. My question for you is, does your organization do anything where like we have your storytellers? Because I'm an artist and a creative figure. I'm trying to, you know, get into more places like that because that stuff is kind of important to me, and I want to really like dig my fingers in and find this record play, like lace roots and really work on these things that I can show my future children.
We have that.
We have that.
We have that. Yeah, I love Springfield and Polio. Definitely, they deserve a lot of love. So we'd love to talk to you because there's really great initiatives happening there. And I feel like people don't like it. We need to talk about these. You know, there's so much bad news people talk about. They like talking about bad news, but there's really amazing work. Like something that Lisa Rivera that's going to be in the Indigenous people say in Newton, and she's around that area. And there's also no Esperanza and Polio, and they're a really great organization there. So we'd love to talk to you. So as an artist, I also was involved in Polio to do some cultural planning for the Puerto Rican community there and engage artists. So I would love to pull you in. But that's really important because we need artists and young people and like just people to tell stories of our communities and preserve them and have them up on walls. We need to see ourselves first. So I love that you're leaning into that call. So happy to talk to you. Yeah. Any other questions so we can wrap up and close off?
Massachusetts, can you explain a little bit more?
Yes.
What other ways we can?
Yeah, so Transportation for Massachusetts is the anchor organization holding a lot of this organizing, and they're a coalition of organizations. So we can connect you because we're trying to figure out how to help people access resources, right? And they're the anchor org there, you know, and they know how to navigate the community, the relationships between municipalities and also the foundations. Can you tell me more about your work?
Well, I'm working with the Springfield Coalition of, they're trying to build stuff for Massachusetts, Springfield area. We don't have nothing.
Yeah.
We all just have the Basketball Hall of Fame and we have the MGM Casino. You know, they were trying to plan to do a port, like cars, trucks in an area. I had a great idea. I could put it in. I wanted to do like a miniature small golfing area as a traditional, like from the island.
So that's
So I was even going to name it after our family and put it under our, you know, family tribe name.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's my goal would be at least to attract more people and attract all that have been out there doing, you know, all the bad things and have a batting cage in there too.
I love that.
So, you know, I'm trying to see how can I get it deeper in like that and get started and put our indigenous people name out there.
Yeah.
Everybody just, they don't have no sense like, oh, no, we're not, they're on, no, we still exist.
Yeah, that's a big one. We still exist, but that's an amazing project. I think for me, what comes up is like mass development. They have TDI fellows.
Yeah.
They usually put a person in to find what are the community projects that need to be funded.
Yeah.
So we can find out who's the Springfield person, get connected with them,
Yeah.
and then see if there's an opportunity to have them support the funding or even capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's a great project, and there is funding out there for like youth initiatives too. And I love the Valley, like just like to give people an outdoor recreation.
Like the Springfield is going back there and music going to the batting cage. They have to go. I heard from a couple of young bucks that they have to go either all the way to Slow Meadow or to another Connecticut. Like there's not much for them.
But let's talk about that too, so we can connect with who it is that we need to talk to. But Springfield for sure, and I love Springfield. I've been going there since I returned from Puerto Rico because of so many beautiful people there, and it is true. It's really hard. It's needed.
Surrounded by like that.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
I think we're in the second place. So.
Yeah. Features. And like from our team together, we talk about this, like if you late at night, not maybe sleep on and off, like we want to put our things out there that connect to things that people aren't so like they're not ready for these more traditional, so we make it a little modern to them, like slowly bit by bit, for them to understand or see, hey, if you ever thought this as well, like you were helping us and we're helping build this just the community in general.
Yeah.
And I find that to be
It is. But definitely, let's talk. So be a big thing today, but also with some connections. Right. One last one to close off. Good energy. More? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Here's my connect. Please hit me up. I'm available.